Okay, so this is Ancient Stone Tablets. This was originally released on the Satellaview in Japan. And I guess a lot of the appeal was to try to give younger kids something to play that was maybe not as difficult as normal Link to the Past. So this game has some tweaks to it that make it a little linear, easier to play, that type of thing. You get to choose from a boy or a girl to customize. And yeah, so our first step is going to be into Eastern Palace. In Eastern, without having to do the green pendant and everything, we'll go ahead and get the boots at the end. And one thing you'll notice right off is that the flute behaves like the mirror. In Ancient Stone Tablets, there is no Dark World, so the game doesn't have a mirror. So the flute is dual purpose. It functions as the flute and as the mirror. So yeah, when this game was released, it was released as a supplement to a TV show, I think. And that TV show was in weekly episodes. And each week you would get one episode of the game to play along. So in this run, we have to switch between the 4 weeks. Right now we're on week 1. There are 2 dungeons per week. So after we complete these first 2 dungeons, we'll be switching over to week 2. And we don't really have to worry about rupees here. The only thing that we spend rupees on is the flippers coming up to the 2nd dungeon. And let's just say the game has a little bit easier way of giving you the money that you need for the flippers. Oh. So we're just going to work our way on through. Nothing too special here. I do want to pick up these arrows here for the boss. You can probably guess what it is. It's Eastern Palace. It's pretty predictable. So that should be enough. One thing to note about these, the boss in this dungeon, is that it will take fewer arrows than it normally does. And I'll go ahead and pick up a few extra arrows along the way. I like to use arrows on Helmasaur, so just to be safe. And another thing you'll notice is that the dash is multi-directional, which is really nice. That Armos fight was okay. Okay, so instead of crystals, we're collecting stone tablets. And when we get to the end of the game is going to tell us, okay, you collected all these stone tablets, we can finally unlock the method to defeat Ganon. But we're kind of not going to wait on them to figure out the secret to beating Ganon either. Which you'll see when we get to the end of the game. We're just going to go ahead and dash on over here. And figure there might be something under these bonk rocks, so we're just going to go ahead and pop in there. And here's a guy that will give us 300 rupees. Now, why is that 300 rupees important? Well, we're getting ready to grab some flippers, and remember how I said the game is a little bit easier for the people that maybe found Link to the Past to be a little too difficult? Well, the flippers only cost 300 rupees. So we're going to go ahead and pick those up. It's handy that that guy was sitting right outside of Zora's domain, ready to give us 300 rupees. Pretty great. And here's the second dungeon. So there's not really too much to note in this dungeon. But it is worth noting that after this dungeon is complete, we'll be headed to week 2. So as soon as we exit the dungeon and feel like the game has saved, we'll go ahead and switch over to week 2. And we use just a little trick to keep our save files in sync so that we don't have to worry about switching those up as well. Oh, and one thing you might notice as I go through is that fairies will sometimes appear at random. The game goes one step further in trying to make sure that you don't die by making fairies spawn out of the floor sometimes. And yeah, I mean, you don't typically need them, but I guess it's nice. Ancient Stone Tablets has a habit of giving you an item that's only intended to be used once or twice. And the boomerang is a great example of that. It is only used to do that trick through the entire run. Anytime you see an item that's on a faraway ledge, you're using the magic boomerang, and you're getting it that way. It's not really much in the way of variety, but I guess it's a little bit of a challenge. There is a part where there's a tiny amount of RNG related to getting an item, because I have to get it from killing an enemy that's across the room. So that gets a little interesting, but it shouldn't be too bad. Oh. Let's go grab that key. Gotta watch out for those doors that drag you in. Sometimes you walk right away from the key. Three hits on Moldorm with the fighter sword, and he's down. A little bit easier of a boss. Not too bad. So we're gonna wait for this text to spin. And then once we're back outside the waterfall, we'll be switching to week 2. Okay. All right. Yeah, some of the doorways in Link to the Past and subsequently in Ancient Stone Tablets, once you get close enough to the open door area, it'll start to drag you in. So you gotta kind of be careful about that, especially when item drops are there, because if that's the case, you'll have to go back and hit the thing that gave you the drop again. It's kind of a bummer. If you fall in the pit fighting Moldorm, you just take a heart of damage and you're put back on the floor. It's kind of boring. It's not nearly as exciting as the Tower of Hero fall. Really laggy. There's a thing across the room. Better use the boomerang. And a lot of Ancient Stone Tablets is really just knowing where these random item placements are. Because a lot of times it's just like a particular pot here, or a specific chest there, or something like that. And it's the dungeons feel a lot more spacious and a little more random than in the normal game. Whoa. He was anxious to come get me. Alright. I'm gonna hop over here and grab a few. Oh, nope, that's right. It's all bombs. Okay. That's unlucky. Alright, well the good thing is it doesn't take too much to get back. But, yeah, I got caught by the tail coming back. RIP. None of these are hearts. That's fine. Alright, here we go again. Oh. Man, I'm getting smashed by this tail. Alright. Revenge is had. It's all good. Honestly, the only boss that I ever worry about dying to in Ancient Stone Tablets is Helmasaur. He's just kind of unpredictable sometimes, so. Well, that and Ganon, but, you know. Everybody dies to Ganon every now and then. So what you're seeing here is that sometimes the game does this fog effect on the world, and it seems to be random, and just after a period of time it tries to decide if it's going to give you that fog. And sometimes it gives you different enemies that you have to deal with. Wow. But in this case, it doesn't seem like I'm seeing any of the new ones, so we'll just go ahead and go on through to the next dungeon. These slugs are a little dangerous. They deal a lot of damage to you, and you kind of want to take a little care around them, but that wasn't too bad. That's pretty much the only time that we see ourselves using the hammer, except for the boss fight, until we get Tempered Sword. We don't really have to compensate too much for the weak sword. Okay, just kind of working my way through the dungeon. Hitting all these one-off things. Big key. And we'll get the big chest shortly. And then we're gonna flute right on back. Oh. And then once we go through this big key door, we'll basically be at the boss. We'll just have to do just a tiny bit more. This is a hookshot maze. It's really great. Shows you how to use the hookshot. Hookshotting everywhere. And there we go. Oh my god, give me the puff. Alright. We got the cycle, but that's okay. And now we're just going to do a few spins to finish it up. Alright, and that is the end of week 2. So we're going to go ahead and let this walk on out. And then once we're outside, we'll switch to week 3. And we'll keep on moving. So, this chest right here is what I think is the only case of a disposable item in the game. And it's temporary gloves, and they only let you lift a certain number of stones. So, it lets you get inside this dungeon, which has the regular gloves. I guess they thought it would add a little depth, so... hookshot. Okay. This is a pretty obvious torch puzzle, so we're going to use the torch. This jelly is being super kind right now. Alright. Remember that pot right there? Because you might see a trick that is taken from regular Link to the Past in terms of dropping blocks onto a switch. It's a much shorter puzzle though. We'll just go ahead and pop this down here. And there we go. More torches. We must have to light them all. Okay, there are the permanent gloves. We don't have to worry about those silly temporary gloves now. So, let's go grab the next item, which just happens to be our next sword upgrade. Just hanging out in a random chest in a dungeon. There we go. It's the level 3 sword, totally not the tempered sword. That's different. And as best as I can tell, there's not a Master Sword looking equivalent in this game. As far as like the glowing white-ish sword. I haven't seen it so far. So I think you just go from fighter to tempered. Alright. So now that we fought Lamos, we can go to desert. Yeah. Yeah, for whatever reason, they decided to move Lamos from desert to swamp. Or the dam, I guess. When desert is the next dungeon that you have to visit anyways. So normally they like for you to pick up stones that are up there. We're gonna go for just a tiny little clip into the wall here. Just to skip those. They're right up there. Alright. Front half of desert is not very exciting. It's 2 connected rooms, and then you're out. The back half is where you get to start actually navigating the dungeon. And you might see all this sand and be like, oh, maybe we fight Lamos again. No. No, there's a boss that makes even less sense in the sand coming up. Yep, that room gets a little laggy with all the stuff on screen. It's kind of unavoidable. Alright, so we'll hit this switch. And we'll grab this chest. And good to go. Alright, so here's the part where we have to shoot the enemy from across the room. We're gonna try to... There we go. It's kind of annoying, but gotta be done. The only way to do it is just to peg him with some arrows, so... And coming up is probably one of the easier boss fights. And I know that, you know, given that it's ancient stone tablets, a lot of the boss fights are fairly easy. But this one is probably the easiest of them all. All you do is spam Fire Rod until he's dead. Pretty good fight. And that's going to be the end of week 3. We're almost done. We're just going to go ahead and wait until we exit the dungeon as usual, and then we'll pop right over to week 4. Alright, so unfortunately, they've deemed that we can no longer explore alone. Princess Zelda has to help us. She's going to be really useful along the way, and by really useful, I mean she's going to wait until we complete all of week 4 to do one useful thing that we'll then ignore and complete the game. So, you know, I guess it's nice to have some company. She runs fast too, that helps. So next up we're going to get the magic cape. Just kidding, it's not in this game. So with this being week 4, this is going to be closing in on the end of the game. We've got 2 more dungeons, and then we're going to have to do the final fight. You might be able to guess what it is. Won't be much of a surprise. But there's a little bit of a mechanic in this game where they add a little build-up to it, and I'll talk about that more when we get to it. But that's the whole reason why we have Zelda tagging along. Is she's going to ultimately try to assist us in the final fight. So we got the Titan's Mitts. That will help us with exactly 1 stone that we have to lift. Nice. And pretty soon you'll get to see that thing that I mentioned about fairies randomly coming out of the ground. And you might see Cain of Samaria, and you might think, oh, I know what boss this is. And you would be wrong, because it is not the boss you think. So there we go. Cold Stare was holding on to the magic cape, but it must have gone with him when he died, so we get no cape. We're just going to have to leave the King's Tomb empty-handed, except for a tablet. So now that we have the Titan's Mitts, let's go lift the 1 stone that we needed the Titan's Mitts for, and then we'll be on to the final tablet dungeon. Oop. Here is an elaborate torch puzzle. It's very elaborate. We're gonna go upstairs and do this. Boom. Then we're gonna gonna open that door again, just so that we don't get zapped by these guys. And we're on our way up Death Mountain. Death Mountain's a little different. Usually it takes you to where you can get to all these dungeons. Turns out in this game it is actually a dungeon itself. And you might notice that I'm hammering things individually. Unfortunately, I cannot item dash in this version of the game, so we got to do it the old-fashioned way. One item at a time. Right. This is an elaborate switch puzzle, and we solved it. Now, a lot of the puzzles in the game are very linear, so I mean, if you look around a little bit, you're gonna figure it out. You know, only 2 pots there. You're eventually gonna lift the one that has the switch. They're not too complicated. I will say that one of the things I wish they carried over to the regular game would be the multi-directional dash. It is really wonderful. Except for the part where you bonk on things more, but other than that, it's pretty great. Okay. Oh, there's one of those fairies that comes out of the ground randomly. Caught me off guard a little bit there. But yeah, sometimes the game just randomly spawns fairies for you. So even if you're losing a little health, eventually it'll just pop a fairy out of the ground, and you'll be fine. Okay. And you might be able to guess which boss this is going to be by the item that I got, but don't get too excited. He's probably one of the easier ones in the game. Don't even need a magic refill for this. We're just going to go right for it. Alright, and that's Trinex. Alright, so that's all the dungeon bosses. We have all the tablets. We're going to make our way up here, and Zelda is going to help us finish the game. So let's go ahead and get her up here to this tablet where she's going to do some research. So she says, there's something sealed here. I'm gonna figure out the mystery of the seal. You're gonna have to wait a while. Alright, alright. So, we're not really gonna wait. We're just gonna go pick up the Master Sword, and we're gonna keep going. I figured out that you actually don't have to walk up the pedestal if you grab the sword from that side. Found that earlier today by accident. It's completely useless, but, you know, funny to look at, I guess. So now that we have the Master Sword that's totally not the Butter Sword, we're just gonna go to Ganon. We're not gonna wait on Zelda. We're just gonna go ahead and work our way over to Ganon's tower. We know it's over here somewhere. Let's just keep clipping up mountains until we find it. And there we go. Yeah, it is worth noting that I wouldn't have needed the Master Sword at all if it wasn't for the fact that Ganon's Tower's entrance is blocked. So that's the only reason why I need it. I've tried to skip the sword before, and it just hasn't worked out. We're just gonna play this a little tiny bit safe. Teleport, teleport, teleport. Just like in the regular game. Also, the floor does not disappear, so you have no danger of falling down after Ganon attacks you. You just kind of hang out with him and hit him until he's gone. So, same torch glitch still works. And we're just going to use silverless strats here. Butter Sword still does as much damage. Or, our Master Sword still does Butter Sword damage. So, we're only going to need 8 sword swings here. I missed one there. Alright, and there we go. So, yeah, that is Ancient Stone Tablets any percent. Timing will end once we get the fade out from Ganon. So, yeah. And that's the end of the run. If you wait a little bit, Zelda will go ahead and tell you, you know, in about 20 minutes or so that she figured out the silver arrows and now you can beat Ganon. That's a good time. So let's go say hi to her. Let's go ahead and pop back in this portal. Oh god. Alright, and that's the end of that.